At a secret meeting of EU 27 ambassadors last night, member states threw the support behind Jean-Claude Juncker and Donald Tusk, who warned Mrs. May she would not be allowed to reopen her EU withdrawal deal. Senior diplomats endorsed the tough position set by the EU's most senior officials as they discussed the coming weeks. Diplomats are unlikely to even make any offers to help the Prime Minister until after the next House of Commons vote on the Brexit deal, which she promised would take place on February 14. A move by Brussels will likely lead to a Valentine's Day massacre of Mrs. May's Brexit deal in London as infuriated MPs voice their frustration that the backstop still remains in place. Mrs. May promised MPs that she would return to Brussels to renegotiate the controversial Irish backstop after they supported an amendment that calls for the insurance mechanism to be replaced with alternative arrangements that avoid a hard border, but Brussels will strongly oppose any moves by the British government to make changes to the 585-page withdrawal agreement, which was agreed by Mrs. May and her EU counterparts at a special summit last November. After a lengthy phone call with the Prime Minister, Mr. Tusk, President of the EU Council, said the EU position is clear and consistent. Brexit news: EU 27 will refuse Theresa May offer until after February 14. Image Getty. The withdrawal agreement is not open for renegotiation. Yesterday, we found out what the UK doesn't want, but we still don't know what the UK does want. After Mrs. May's February 14 vote, EU diplomats will offer the Prime Minister the opportunity to revisit the political declaration, the aspirational wish list for the future UK-EU trade and security relationship that was drawn up alongside the divorce deal. Michel Barnier, the EU's chief negotiator, has tried to tempt Mrs. May to sign up to a closer relationship with Brussels in order to alleviate the need for the backstop. But this would likely mean Britain agreeing to remaining in the EU customs union and single market to prevent a hard border on Ireland. And if Mrs. May continues to push for a fix to be included in the draft withdrawal agreement, a so-called joint interpretive statement, a legally binding method that sets out both sides' commitment to avoiding the backstop becoming permanent. This method has precedent in EU negotiations and was used by the bloc to conclude its free trade agreement with Canada. The deal was largely ratified by the majority of parliaments across the bloc apart from the Belgian regional body in Wallonia. The joint interpretive statement served as a bolt-on to the existing treaty without actually reopening the agreement and calmed Wallonia's concerns. But EU ambassadors discussed that this option should not be tabled until after the Valentine's Day vote in the Commons. The senior diplomats also agreed to row back on the demands that Britain should be offered more generous no-deal Brexit plans to limit any chaos on the continent. After a discussion with the EU Commission's controversial Secretary-General, Martin Selmayr, who is leading no-deal preparations, the EU 27 agreed not to tweak his work. Spain and France, last week, both expressed concerns that the EU's plans for road haulage and air travel should offer Britain better terms. Mr. Selmayr urged diplomats not to be tempted by the lure of so-called mini-deals, and said that a no-deal Brexit is not the end of the world, according to diplomats in the room.